So first things first, even today when people are like, you went to Cuba, how did you do that? They have 12 different visas that you can apply for. 12. Some of the most common ones from my knowledge as of August 2023 were to support the Cuban people. You can go for educational purposes. You can go for religious purposes. And I think it's like something that you can do related to community. Check it out. Go look it up. There are 12 visas. So when you're applying for your visa, you have to select what's your reason of going. I selected support for the Cuban people as my visa. Like, this is the reason I'm coming to the country. When you book your flight, you have to add in, why are you coming to this country? What visa are you coming under? There are only certain airlines from the U.S. that travel to Cuba, and there are only certain locations that they travel from. I think, don't quote me, do your own research. These are just a few of my tips. I think it flies either out of Florida or Texas. There may be other states in there, but I was coming from D.C., so my connecting flight was in Florida. Remember, I said there are only certain airlines. So if you were to use a site like Expedia or one of them like travel sites, Cuba may not show up. But guess who does go there, baby? Southwest Airlines. So I go to Southwest Airlines, I book our flights, and they had a deal, people, a freaking deal. And I want y'all to understand, like, I literally made a decision, and within like 2 to 3 weeks, we were in Cuba. So you get your deal on I got my deal on Southwest. I went on Southwest. I had a layover in Florida. I think it was Tampa. No, it was either Tampa or Fort Lauderdale. It might have been. I got to look back. I don't remember. I had my layover there. And then you, when you get to the gate, you know, you have to have your visa and all of that. Now, there are 2 ways you can do the visa. Some people you can get your visa at the gate. So literally at the gate, there is someone at the, like a kiosk outside the gate that will give you a visa to Cuba. But I'm a Virgo, which means I'm a planner and details matter. So baby, you know, I did not wait until I got there. I paid for our visas in advance. I may have paid more because I did it in advance, but there was a security in me in paying for it. So I'm gonna tell you the site. I'm about to look it up right now, but I paid in advance and it came like within a few days. So I had our visa. I could fill it out. They show you exactly how to fill it out because that is important. And I did all of that before I even left to go to Cuba. So I booked my visa through Cuba Visa Services. And again, I did it. It came almost instantly. I had my visa. We get on the plane. We're good. We get to Cuba. You know, you got to go through customs and all of that. They also ask you, why are you here? I was told, you know, they say be consistent, support for the Cuban people. I was let through. Some advice that I was given before I went to Cuba and that I learned did happen to some people once they got there is have your proof. What is your proof that you're supporting the Cuban people? So my proof was I did a few things. AirBNB has experiences on there. So if you go through AirBNB Experiences, you can book experiences in a country, at least for Cuba, prior to getting there. So there were a few things I knew I wanted to do, and I booked all of this before I left. And part of me doing this was understanding, like, I can't have access to my debit card, my credit cards, or any electronic cash, right? So anything that I spend in the country has to be the cash I bring with me. So as much as I can pay in advance, that's what I'm going to do. I looked on AirBNB Experiences for Cuba. You have to put, even on AirBNB, that the reason for your visa is support for the Cuban people. One thing that is important, you're going to have the same reason on everything you do. If it's education, you saying that on everything. If it's religion, you saying that on everything. For me, it was support for the Cuban people. I put that on everything. There were a few things I knew I wanted to do. My daughter is a dancer. We took salsa lessons in someone's house in Cuba. It was her dance studio and house, but a Cuban taught us salsa. And we learned, you know, to play the little instrument and everything else. I knew I wanted to do a cooking class in Cuba. So Beyond Roots Cuba, I cannot, like, this organization, listen, they're the truth. They are the truth. They have an organization, and I guess they do like some travel things and experiences, but they also do things within the community. Look them up, Beyond Roots Cuba. We went there, they do a cooking class, so it's an authentic Cuban cooking class. And we had drumming lessons, and we got to do some shopping. So that was beautiful. I also knew that there were beautiful beaches in Cuba, and I am 100% a beach person. And one of my favorite beaches, I can't say the word, Varadero or something like that. Y'all, we could walk so far out into this ocean and it was still just at our ankles, or like it may have come to our knees at certain points. I booked that in advance. And I also knew I wanted to do like the old fashioned car tour. So all of these things I booked in advance. Salsa lessons, a day trip to the beach, which included food. It included stops along the way. It included the actual drive out there. I did the cooking class with Beyond Roots Cuba, and I did the car tour, which took us all around Cuba. The beautiful part of this is you know exactly who your money is going to. It is supporting the Cuban people. These experiences were led and guided by people, by the Cubans themselves, which also aids in having an authentic Cuban experience. Now I'm going to take a step back. There were other things that I did in advance because, you know, I'm a Virgo. You can, and details matter, you can in fact book very affordable housing in Cuba, also through Airbnb. So you can do like, there are hosts where it might be their house, but maybe they have a room or they have rooms. You can do boutique hotels, and it is very affordable. You can look on Airbnb and see the differences in prices. Because I was taking my daughter, someone made a comment to me that had been to Cuba more than once. I would feel safer if it were you and her if you got a hotel. But as Americans, there are only certain places we can stay. And so I went, since I got my flight through Southwest Airlines, I also got Southwest Airlines had a list of hotels that Americans can stay in. This is important because we cannot stay everywhere. And in fact, if you go to like, you know, that site where the U.S., when you're traveling, I can't think of it right now, you're traveling and they say, hey, these are the warnings in this country, blah, 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 blah. There are hotels that the U.S. is like, baby, if you go there, it's on you. You can't though. Don't be trying to like, oh, I'm going to stay where I want to stay. You can, but I'm not. I went to the list where the Southwest said we could stay. Like they had a list of hotels that were for Americans, and I picked a hotel. And I ended up booking that through Cuba Travel Services. I stayed at the Grand Ashton. Let me look it up. Hotel Grand Ashton. Baby, it was like that. It was a nice spot. We stayed there. I also booked my taxi from the airport to our hotel. I did that also through Cuba Travel Services. These are online sites. And I booked our hotel back. I was actually like kind of afraid because when I got to Cuba, the power went out immediately in the airport. And it was funny because I didn't speak Spanish. You know, some of the people there didn't speak English, but an older like grandma, she was on the flight with me. So she was smiling and stuff at my daughter and I. And then when we got in the airport and the power went out, she came, found me, tapped me on my shoulder, and pointed for me to go sit down. Like, baby, this is going to take a while. I was so afraid because we probably were in the airport an hour and a half longer than, you know, after our flight. And I'm like, Lord, the taxi is going to leave. But when we got out, he was there with our son. And I think that's all of what I did to prepare in advance. So I essentially had an agenda. I had purchased all of our excursions. I had an agenda of things I wanted to do each day. And I printed everything out. I had a paper copy of my passport. I sent my passport, the hotel information, my agenda to my mother and my cousin. So if in the event that you can't communicate with me, you have it. I had a paper copy of my passport and my daughter's passport and our real ones. And I have everything printed out. So if I would have went through customs and they said, what is your proof that you're supporting the Cuban people? I had my documents. This is what we're doing, and this is how we're supporting. And then the last things, of course, was figuring out how much money to bring. I took $2,000. I probably brought home $800, and I splurged at the end. I'm trying to think of anything. Oh, and I'll show you all a video of how I prepared for toiletries. And what I have always told my daughter, and what I would say for people, are when you're going to someone else's country, do not come in there with the arrogance of being a U.S. citizen. Do not come in there complaining when things don't work the way that they work in the U.S. Do not go in these people's country and expect things to be what we have. So that includes, like, they don't have toilet paper in public bathrooms. They don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. They may or may not have soap and water. So what can you do to prepare yourself in advance for being in this country? And I'll show you a video of how I prepared for that. And I think that's it. So we're about to jump into Cuba.